delicious holiday feast. Choose your main from 12-hour smoked pork, oven-roasted turkey, or maple-glazed ham. Then mix and match your sides with options like scalloped potatoes, mac and cheese, steamed herb vegetables, and more.
And don't forget the dessert. Choose from a selection of mouth-watering pies.
All from just $94.99. Order online at fosters.ky or in-store.
This Thanksgiving, savor the season with Foster's.
From Radio Cayman Studio, this is
Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community.
Welcome to another episode of Money Sense, brought to you by the CFA Cayman Islands Society. And our guest today is Dr. Sari Stamforst. And Dr. Stamforst is a futurist and has spoken to us at the CFA Investment Forum, the theme of which was futurology, what's coming in the mix. So what does it mean to be a futurist?
It means that I look into the future, and I have my suitcases full of different kinds of tools to help people to see what the future will be bringing us, and working together on future.
I think many people will be curious how someone becomes a futurist. What was your journey to becoming a futurist?
Wow. Nowadays it's much easier. There are master's programs in quite many universities to really study foresight. Foresight is the academic name for this profession. And but when I started as an economics student, and my master's was in systems, and then my PhD was in business school. I studied strategy, and I specialized in strategy tools.
Interesting. Now, but in your talk, you mentioned that you did work on climate and the weather.
Yes, because I was really into mathematics and modeling large-scale models. So I started in 1985. I got really excited about creating a climate model. Climate change wasn't a topic at that point. It wasn't talked about in mainstream science. So it just happened to happen to me that I got really great data from the local weather stations in Helsinki, Finland. I was born in Finland, and I started programming with Pascal, a really nice model. And what happened was my model created results that were chaotic. And I thought I had made a mistake, and I looked for the bug, and I kept on looking, and I got more and more into the model, and I worked 7 months on my model, and I didn't go to school during that time because I just was so into the model, and I was so upset that I couldn't make it work. And after 7 months, I had to go to my professor and to confess that I hadn't been to any of the courses. I just had fallen back on everything, but I had this model that I couldn't make work. And he was very smart, and he said that he has heard about this, and he knows the research institutes in Austria, and they're getting similar results. So he connected me with the people working at the research institute in Austria, and I learned about climate change that way.
Amazing. And so what lessons did you take away from that, or inspirations did you get out of that maybe set you on this new trajectory?
So what I learned from that was that my brain could not be trusted, and that I had so many biases in my brain that I sort of wanted the model not to be true, and I really worked hard that I would find a bug, and it would be like an easy fix, and the world wouldn't be having a climate change that was chaotic. And I also learned that because I believed really in my programming skills, I was ashamed to go to my professor and tell him that I had failed. So it was a lot of looking at myself afterwards and thinking like, my brain just really cannot be trusted.
Wow. Okay. So then how does that inform how you think about the future? What do you mean, I guess, when you say my brain can't be trusted, and how does that inform your framework for thinking about how life's going to unfold?
That's a really good question. So that really made me think, what do I need so that I could get information that can sort of bypass all the biases in my brain. Like, what kind of tools can I use that I could get information from different points of views that would make me better version of me. That's how I got into different kinds of methods and tools, and I started creating tools for business purposes, for strategy and strategic thinking and decision making.
I see it, which was back to what you actually did your PhD in.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Yes.
I see. Okay, and so are there any interesting stories about how you use those frameworks with companies to do interesting things?
So Foresight has a lot of tools, different kinds of tools for different purposes. So you usually take a tool that you need to get people thinking in a different way, and especially hard for human brain is looking forward. We often, if we're looking forward, we often look forward from the perspective of fear. And what happens when you're fearful, that's all good. Our brains were created to be fearful of the future because that's how we have survived. That's how we got here from the caves. We had to be fearful of the winter coming. We had to go and pick berries, or if there was a bear out there, we had to be fearful to save ourselves. So it worked really well then. But right at this moment when we have difficulties in the world, being fearful, what it gets you to is limited knowledge about the options that you have. If you're not fearful, then you can think of many more options. So a lot of my tools have to do with creating new angles so that you forget that you're fearful.
So fear narrows your focus, and then when you're able to relax and let go of that anxiety or need for control, then you can be more open-minded about what some potential solutions might be.
And also fear makes you dig holes. It makes you think that something's really difficult and you can't get through it, when actually in real life it might be easy to go through that and figure out solutions.
So why do so many people have so much trouble letting go of that fear? And what are some tools that you would recommend to get people out of those holes?
Yeah, so one of my favorite tools is future backwards. So when we first imagine the result, the vision of what could be, then it's much easier to think about the path, how we got there. And I have designed these different kinds of ways to use that tool. At some point when I was looking at where our world is at, I came upon some research that said that 56% of youth under the age of 25 believe that the world is coming to an end. There was further studies that found out that many young people believe that the world is coming to an end within their lifetime. And I thought, okay, as a futurist, what do I do with this? I need to understand how people are thinking about the future. If there is no hope anymore, will we take any action? And I thought this is a really big problem if we don't have hope. So I created these dinners in the year 2092. And I invite people to these dinners, and I tell people, all kinds of different people, I tell them that, welcome to my dinner, you have saved the world and you will get a prize. And people are like, what is this? And this is an award dinner, and you will get an award for saving the world. And I usually have 6, maybe 12, maybe 18 people at the dinner table, and I give each person an award for saving the world. And we pretend that we're in the year 2092, and everybody proudly gives an acceptance speech.
Oh, wonderful. In which they have to imagine how they saved the world.
They have to imagine how they saved the world. Right. I often ask people to bring some sort of a material, gadget or something that will prove how their path went. So it's easy often to talk about something when it's a little bit more concrete. So people tell stories how they saved the world. And what is really interesting is that there are a few people that said that, oh, the world didn't get saved. but most of the people really know back somewhere what they would do to save the world. So it's quite interesting that we all have this fire that we want to live. And it comes through that we have some sort of a dream how we would save the world. And my researcher friends that do biological research in biology, cell researchers, they tell me that life loves life. And they see that in their petri dishes, that cells want to live. And it's the same thing with us. Every single cell in us wants to live. And how it comes through is that we do have these dreams of how we would save ourselves, how we would save the world. And the stories are just absolutely wonderful. And this is a way to bypass our brain and the fears that our brain has and come up with visions of better future.
So have you written down some of the results of these dinners? Do you have any interesting ones to share?
I have some interesting ones to share, but I have not written down any. I just remember the stories because some stories are just quite wonderful. In Hungary, there was this one woman that came to the dinner and had brought a glass jar with her. And the glass jar had cardamom seeds. And cardamom seeds smell so good. So in the year 2092, we were all having a dinner and she passed around the cardamom seeds and she said, yes, in 2020 something, these were just cardamom seeds. But as you know, these are the little things that created world peace. And the way it happened was that, in the 2020s and 2030s, I really looked at people in the world, in the cities, and there were so many people that were not seen or heard. So many people that, people just walked past them and didn't even notice that they actually existed. And I thought, this is really problematic. A lot of people don't get heard, seen. I really was an avid gardener, and I knew that cardamom seeds smelled so good. So I gave some of these cardamom seeds to these people, and they smelled good. And the people that walked past them went, oh, what smells so good? And they realized that, oh, there's another person. And they had a little discussion. And that's how I got into this research on making this cardamom essence. And now, as you all know, if you just wear this cardamom essence, everybody sees you and hears you. And that's how I saved the world. People started to acknowledge each other and they were able to talk to each other and listen.
What an incredibly uplifting story. Oh my goodness. We're going to break now, and when we come back, maybe you'll have one more story to share, and then I know you have some concerns that we're going to get to.
Excellent.
This is
Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community. Brought to you by the CFA Society Cayman Islands.
And now, more Money Sense.
Okay, so I'm here with Dr. Sari Stamforst, and she's been sharing with us the dinners that she invites people to in the year 2092 and the purpose of those dinners. So maybe just for those who didn't hear what happens at these dinners and why, a quick reminder, and then I'd love for you to share one more interesting example of something that people come up with.
So I have been inviting people to have dinners with me in the year 2092 because I was worried about hope. I was worried that mankind doesn't have hope anymore, and I wanted to figure out if we do have hope. And I have, in having these hundreds, maybe thousands of dinners now, I have figured out that we do have hope. We all know what we do to save the world.
Wonderful. And what, you shared one story. What's another great example?
Another great example is that I had this dinner where I invited over 20 young people who had different kinds of disabilities. I have had these dinners for very rich and powerful people, and also very poor environments, and for young people and old people. And this was the first time I had a dinner that I hosted for disabled people. And some of them came with their assistants. I was really worried how this dinner would go and if everybody having this dinner understood what was going on and what we were doing. And I was really worried about my capabilities and how the dinner would go. But there was no problem at all. We had such a wonderful time, and people gave amazing acceptance speeches on how they saved the world. I was especially worried about two people who had Down syndrome, and they came with assistance and in a wheelchair. I didn't know how it would go. And when people came in, I had a lot of different things in a bucket that they could choose from to take with them and build a story around these little things. There were like candle holders and silly hats and glasses and whatever. And people picked up different things to talk about. This particular woman, she took a little bucket and she sat there with her little bucket and in the wheelchair, and it was her turn to tell about how she saved the world. And I wasn't really sure if she would be able to speak or if her assistant would try to help in communication. But I gave her flowers and a diploma, and we all clapped and a lot of applause. And she stands up from her wheelchair and she had picked a bucket, so she takes up the bucket and she says, "I saved the water. I saved the water." And she puts down the bucket. And I was like, wow. And I was really impressed that she was able to say that. But that wasn't all. There was a man with Down syndrome next to her, and it was his turn. And I gave him the award and flowers, and he stands up and he looks at the woman next to him and says, "I helped saving the water." Because help really is important. And I thought I would start crying. At that point, I thought, we all know what we need to do. It's just that our society doesn't necessarily let us do what we feel we have a calling for.
Yeah, wow, those are really powerful stories. Before we started recording, you did mention that you are actually quite concerned.
Oh, I'm very concerned about where our society is at right now. I'm very worried about climate change, and especially for nations like here. You guys live in such a beautiful paradise island, and climate change is really worrisome here.
So say more about that. I mean, I think a lot of people will be quite curious to learn some details.
So as a futurist, there are 3 different time perspectives to study the future. One is foresight, one is hindsight, and one is insight. A hindsight perspective to this is that we have had a world on this planet that had similar carbon dioxide measurements as we have right now. That time was called Pliocene, about 250 million years ago. And that time was pretty stable, 300 million years of that same time period. So it could be that we're going towards that kind of a time, and we can learn from that time period. And what is hopeful is that it is a time period where humans could have survived. It is a time period where there were areas where humans could easily have lived. So this doesn't mean the end of humankind. It means that we need to be prepared, and we need to research more what that time period was like. Unfortunately, during that time period, the water level was 10 to 20 meters higher than what it is right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously that's concerning for those of us who live on tiny islands.
Yes.
What else concerns you?
Oh, so it's not only about climate crisis that we have right now. We have a lot of different issues happening. Resource scarcity, about 4 billion people have difficulties getting water all throughout the year. We have problems with wildlife. I think we have 70% less wildlife than what we had in the 1970s. We have serious problems in our societies, the polarization, political difficulties, and right now when we really would need good governance in the world, it doesn't seem like UN has the power to do much, or the WHO. And I'm really worried about the mental challenges that our youth has. We really have difficult challenges. What helps me to understand this is that all these symptoms that we see, they actually come from the systemic setting that we have created. And when you see that we have a system that has created these symptoms, we can change the system. And I really, really believe that system can be changed with different kinds of financial instruments. So if we really put efforts into creating financial instruments that focus on one ecosystem at a time, changing the underlying systems, I think we can create a hopeful future for us.
Okay, so this is, I think you referred to this as systemic investing, which
Yes.
is incredible. I mean, I work in the investment field,
Yeah.
and I've actually never heard of this term systemic. So say more about it.
Yeah, so I think of it as a version 2.0 from impact investing. And the same players in the world that actually have been working for the last 20 years on impact investing are now really researching systemic investing. So Rockefeller Foundation, Ford Foundation, Skoll Foundation, all of them. And I was just at MIT University in Boston, and they are very much invested in systemic investing. So they're really doing research on it and trying to figure out how to go about it.
And so how do we differentiate systemic investing from previous efforts like environmental, social responsibility, impact investing? Why is this systemic investing maybe more hopeful?
So first of all, in systemic investing, you first of all take all the different capitals we have, not only economic capital, but also symbolic capital. We use our network, we use all our knowledge, different kinds of cultural capital. So we take all the capital and we actually work together. We take one ecosystem and we figure out together where would we like this ecosystem to be at one market or area at a time. And we work with, and I think from philanthropy, we've done this before. We know how to do this, to work with all the different organizations. Maybe we have to make some changes in laws. We all work together so that it's not one startup trying to, like usually in impact investing, you take one startup and you pour economic capital into that one startup. Now we actually figure out what kind of different capitals are needed to really move the needle in the ecosystem and work together.
Right, so involving all of the different stakeholders and all of the people that have the ability to make a
Yes.
difference and coordinate them.
Exactly. And I think AI can help us a lot in creating these ecosystem maps and figuring out like what are the leverage points, where do we maybe need to give economic capital, like, and maybe not right away there will be returns for that money, but usually what happens then is that it opens up something else and there will be economic returns with something else.
Right.
So we just need to figure out that this needs to be a little bit more patient capital.
Are there any great success stories that demonstrate the opportunity?
There are a couple. There are a couple stories. I think these little pockets here and there, because this is so very new, that some people, before they knew that this was called systemic investing, they already had started on something and put, philanthropic capital and then maybe some just mainstream capital, and they really cared about the issues. So I think everywhere in the world you find these little pockets where we have had pilots already. Some in agricultural, some in climate change, and some in education.
Wow. How might somebody who's really interested in making a difference get involved?
There's a really nice group of people in the world that work in the field of systemic investing. Anybody is invited to join. Contact me and I'm more than happy to then, make the connections to other friends. And this is a topic that so many people are right now so invested in and so excited about that I think we're going to go somewhere.
Amazing. And then where can people find you?
You can find me from LinkedIn.
Okay.
That's maybe a good way to do it.
All right.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. This has been a really neat conference, and your contribution has been just tremendous. And thank you so much for sitting and sharing with us and our audience.
Thank you for letting me talk to you guys. Thank you.